Ines, it's great to see you again. How we doing down under?
Yeah, really good. Thank you. We've had a bit of a change in the weather actually down here. It's finally started to switch to getting a little bit cold. And when I say cold, it's like 16 degrees, which is cold for us.
Oh, yes, yes. Well,
Sure.
that's really wild because we really are literally on the other side of the world because like here we're finally getting sunny.
Yeah.
I'm sure you've heard of like rainy Seattle. Like we're beginning to come out of that gray and all the rain. I love the rain, but don't get me wrong. By April, it's like okay, it's really nice to see the sun. So I kind of have the opposite experience going on, but
Yeah.
um, enjoy the cold because it obviously it's a bit of a relief from the heat, if anything.
Yeah, absolutely. But we get dry in winter, which is nice. So we're leaving the rainy season behind too.
Oh, okay, nice,
Yeah.
nice. So yeah, some similarities there.
Yeah.
Well, today we're going to be talking about leading by example as being the change as horse people. And um, I'm really excited to dive into this topic with you because I know that you rather recently had completed Leaf's master course in EAL and EMH. And as I was telling you, it's been 12 years since I've had Leaf as a supervisor. And as we talked about earlier about how we evolve and change as professionals in the horse industry, I know Leaf has really grown and changed. And while she was just an incredible supervisor 12 years ago, I know that she's evolved and she maybe even has a little different language. And unfortunately, I haven't had the opportunity to take her master course. So I really look forward to having this conversation with you because I know there will be a lot that you'll be able to, you know, uh, provide that I might be overlooking.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, I'm really excited.
Well, I think what comes up for me when I think about leading by example, um, I think it should be said that I work within EAMH and a little bit within EAL, but I also do with my sports psychology background, I do performance coaching with equestrians too, and that within those three facets, I think what's incredibly important to me is advocating for the horse and our clients in terms of their consent and their sense of agency. And I know those are really big buzzwords, especially within this group. And I have my interpretation or impression of kind of what consent looks like within the framework of EAL or EAMH, and how that can even be quite different within more of that like performance psychology sort of framework. So having to kind of track, the I guess the environment that we're in, and how to effectually, make sure that we are advocating for the horse and the client in a way that feels congruent with that environment.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
I'm just curious what thoughts come up for you around that.
Yeah, I think it's such a fine line, especially when working in the EAL, EAMH sort of field, and when you're running sessions. It's making sure that the horse is, yes, absolutely happy and consenting, but you also have to make sure that the client is happy as well. And I think for me, it's knowing that you're asking your horse questions that they know the answer to, so they're able to say yes. So for instance, for me, I'm thinking about a session that happened last week, and it was we were walking our horse through a little obstacle course. It was I think we stepped over a pole and went around like a barrel. I know my horse can absolutely do this, and I know he can absolutely do this with me. However, he was really sort of wanting to stand still for the client. So using that sort of experiential facilitation and working with the client, I was able to get him through that and get him through that. Yes, making sure that he's happy and consentful, but also that the client is happy as well. Does that sort of make sense?
Oh, most definitely. And I think it really demonstrates what I was going to bring up next about how incredibly beneficial it can be to model what agency or consent looks like within our relationships with horses. And I feel like sort of my default in terms of like how to demonstrate that or exemplify that is through the notion of like co-regulation. Because I feel like if we are able to teach clients skills around how to attune with the horse and really being able to improve how they're reading those indicators of how the horse is saying yes or how the horse is saying no. It does a lot to for me it allows me to feel as though there's a level of emotional safety that is available for both the horse and the client in a way that seems to work incredibly well. And by modeling that with our clients, I feel like obviously number one, that isn't having these unrealistic expectations that they're just going to know how to do these things, because obviously for a lot of them they're not horse people, and this is a very novel experience that can be really nerve-wracking. And so to put them in a situation where they might be experiencing distress because the challenge level is too high and their skill set is too low, I really want to do what I can to model and provide that example so that clients experience a bit more of EU stress, where the skill they're building their skill level by watching and observing me modeling, and they're still being challenged because this is novel and new, but it kind of balances out that sort of the I suppose the factors that they're contending with in terms of this is a stressful experience, but it can be eustress in that we're really pushing ourselves and learning, and it doesn't have to be distressful because we're expecting them to do something that they have very little reference about how to actually perform.
Yeah, exactly. And it can be really stressful for them when they actually have no idea how to, say, lead a horse. And that sort of anxiety is just around that. But then they see you model it and they see you able to actually do it. I think that really helps. And I listened to a podcast the other day, just the idea of being the horse's emotional anchor, but I think it resonates for both the clients and the horses in sessions. So just being able to sort of hold, be calm, stay connected throughout the whole session, really be the emotional anchor for both participant and horse. You can really lead by example and model that change where it's not a heightened situation.
Yes, exactly. And that certainly plays into sort of that notion of co-regulation, because there's various opinions about like how horses might be co-regulating and how they might experience our nervousness or any sort of affect in our body. But I think it is well accepted that is happening in some degree. So doing what we can to co-regulate with our clients as a way of assisting them with co-regulating with our horses. We're doing what we can to not only advocate for our horses and clients, but even ourselves, and keeping ourselves safe in that container.
Yeah, exactly.
I think another thing that I'm incredibly curious about, and I will admit, like I certainly don't feel as though I have this by any means figured out or really have really conclusive answers. I really like to be mindful of this aspect of I know what's best for you moments that I think as horse people we all have, because especially if you think about like vet care or even the kind of vet care that we do on our own, where we don't have to call the vet to come to the barn. That notion of consent, the lines blur a little bit, and we can even think about that with ourselves, like when we go to the dentist or we go to the doctor ourselves or something like that, where we're consenting to do something, but we aren't exactly thrilled about the experience, and that can definitely show up with our horses, and there will definitely be times where those circumstances will present themselves with our clients, where we will have to step in and sort of balance between, you know, the consent, really listening to those yes and no's of our horses and our clients, and then also as professionals being able to delicately, you know, sort of have that conversation around, there are times where um, it might require, you know, listening to those no signals from a horse or maybe even a client, but also intervening in a really soft, thoughtful way where, you know, it's not coming from this place of, well, I know more and I know better. Um, but here's an opportunity for, you know, a lesson in terms of that co-regulated piece around allowing oneself to be cared for, even though the situation might seem, you know, uncomfortable or uneasy for a horse,
Yeah.
or potentially even a client. And I'm curious, like, what thoughts that provokes in you in terms of like your experience.
Yeah, yeah. It makes me think about my own horse. And he really has a fear of needles and injections, and he absolutely hates bute or anything going into his mouth. But he's had several abscesses lately. So there's just things that we have to do. And whilst he's going to say no, it's sort of there's a fine line that's saying, I'm sorry, but we have to care for you. And that sort of vet care has to come first, to reduce the pain for him. So it's, yeah, that comes up for me, and especially working at a residential facility where people are there all the time and there's always people watching. It's sort of like, yes, we always want to say, wait for the horse to say yes. But there are some things where we just have to sort of draw that fine line and say, no, they have to listen to us because it's what's best for them.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a really interesting dynamic. You know, I I feel like in some regards I maybe try to be like a purist in terms of this idea of consent, and also recognizing that there, you know, there kind of, there's limitations in terms of how we facilitate consent and agency for, sometimes both our clients and the horses.
Yeah.
So you know, it would be a conversation that, I think we're having in this group and in this industry, and it's great that this is a topic that, we are dissecting and really digging into, because, you know, I think there's something to really be learned about those times where, we do intervene, and in many regards we are quite socialized or socially conditioned, in terms of like how we do that as parents, how we do that as teachers and coaches and even therapists, and being able to recognize that, um, how that's done, how we attune with our clients, or how we attune even with our horses in those moments where it's like they're clearly giving us pretty big no signals, like they're not having it, and yet being able to, you know, model again for our clients even in those really difficult moments how we can attune and do our best to co-regulate with our horses even when they're giving us those strong no's, so that we can demonstrate to them that, yes, I hear your no, but this really is something that we are doing with very good intentions for your benefit and your welfare, despite the fact that bute tastes horrible and these needles are really scary.
Yeah.
That this is all being done, you know, with very good intentions.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. And I think with the leading by example, what comes up for me as well is our interactions sort of with our vets and our farriers who are coming in. And I know that a lot of the time they have their own practices and the own way that they're doing things. And some of them 20, 30 years, they've been doing things the same way. But if we can at least model how we would like our horses to be treated and how we would like them to treat our horses, I think is really, really important. And it's sort of brings on to that next topic of education in the broader horse industry, but just being able to model how we want our horses to be treated. And I know I find it difficult for me being younger and not being in the horse industry for that long to sort of speak up and say something, but having the courage to do that, to ensure that your horse's welfare is at the forefront.
Definitely. And, you know, just like I had spoke to, you know, those moments, those uncomfortable moments that we have with our horses around getting the clear signal of no, or even maybe with our clients, that that's going to happen with professionals. That's going to happen with our vets and our farriers and potentially dentists and who knows, a pretty wide range of different professionals. And you're right. How can we model to even professionals that yes, we don't have your education, we don't have your background. However, this is a horse that I know really well, and I know how what seems to be really effective in helping this horse maybe turn those no's into okays. Maybe not yeses, but maybe at least okay. And how we can, advocate for ourselves as horse owners or horse people, as a way of making sure that we are advocating for our horses too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. Well, I'm excited. You had mentioned we're going to talk next about public education in the broader horse industry, and definitely a pretty big topic as well. Before we do conclude today and then meet tomorrow to have that discussion, I just want to make sure that there was any concluding thoughts or anything that you wanted to mention before we do conclude for today.
I think sort of my only thought is you only know what you know, and you can only model what you know. So just by continuing to learn and continuing to lead by example is the best way that we can sort of evoke change in the horse industry on that smaller platform.
Awesome. Yeah. And with that, I think, we had that piece around, how we can approach professionals. And I think that level of humility that we can bring forth, you know what, this has been my process and this is how I've changed, and, potentially being able to share, sort of the process that we had of being able to recognize potentially a better way of doing things. By putting our humility out there, that might soften, how that's received by professionals, and maybe not, but it's at least an attempt to let them know that, this isn't, we aren't coming from a place of like criticism and trying to be harsh, as much as, we're really wanting to, demonstrate that we don't know everything, and we're also learning, and that, we're just trying to come about that conversation as delicate as we can. Nice. All right. I'm sorry?
Thank you.
Oh, well, thank you. This is, again, such another great talk, and definitely look forward to seeing you again tomorrow.
Thanks, Nathan. All right.
All right. Take care.